All right. Welcome, folks. I am super excited to be here. We're getting feedback. There we go. Feedback there. Super excited to be here with fantasy and sci-fi author Marie Parks. Going to be chatting about ace representation in fiction and in media, and then talking about the challenges of coming to understand our aspec identities, in a time before Ace Tumblr and all the wonderful online resources that we have access to today. So very excited, being somebody who also did not have much Ace representation growing up. I can certainly appreciate many of those struggles. So it'll be a very interesting chat. And at this point, I would like to allow Marie to introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Taiwai. Thanks, everybody. I'm excited to be here. I mentioned I've been a listener of the show via the podcast format because I am an old ace. And so I'm not on Twitch super frequently, but yeah, I'm excited to be in the thick of it with all of you today. So yeah, I'm Marie Parks, she, her, and I live in New Mexico. I am many things. I have many jobs, but my favorite is being a fantasy and sci-fi author. And I have two published novels out. A third comes out in April. Some short stories. I'm also a writing instructor and have I manage two different writing retreats for speculative fiction writers. So speculative fiction is fantasy, science fiction, horror, alternate history, that kind of good stuff. One of them, I manage the Writing Excuses podcasts retreats. And then I also have my own retreat down here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's super fun. To me, writing is all about community, and there's a lot of overlap for that with the ACEPEC community. Actually, most of my in-person IRL ACE friends I've met through writing communities, so that's been awesome. But yeah, I guess that's a intro for me, and I'm happy to dive into more details as we get going. But excited to be here.
Absolutely, been very much looking forward to chatting with you today. So I guess the first question I have is, how did you get into writing initially? And feel free to kind of talk about some of your work here, of course. Very interested to find out more.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say this with apologies to my middle school teachers, but I got into writing by pretending I was taking notes in class. I've al- I've always been a big reader, and just found my own stories in my head more interesting than whatever was going on in the classroom sometimes. And yeah, so I started writing at that point and had most of my stories at that point were really based on books that I loved reading at the time. And so that was, I think, me learning to write, putting on training wheels kind of. Um, and yeah, I really kind of got back into it more seriously post university, when I actually had more time on my hands. I think you would probably know something about. Um, and it's yeah, I wrote I think 10 novels before I had one day I thought I think this could get published. The one that ended up being my first publication is actually co-authored. It's sitting on the shelf behind me. I think I'm pointing the right way. There's a lag on my screen, so yeah, there it is. It's called Unrelenting, and it's traditionally published. So there's like different ways to get books published. This is through a publisher, as opposed to self-publishing. All ways of publishing are valid. And that one does actually have an audiobook. It's like a fantasy thriller. And my co-author and I were writing, and we were like, wait a minute. As we came to our own realizations about our own sexualities, we were like, hey, I think our main character is Ace. And then decided to actually put it on the page. because several reasons, but one of them is just that there still is such a dearth of ace rep in all sorts of art. And so it felt like, maybe 50 years from now, I wouldn't need to, like, it could just be like ace coded and that would be great. But I wanted to be explicit about it. And so did my co-author. Her name is Jess Honard. And yeah, so that was really gratifying, I think, to like explicitly contribute to the small but growing body of media with Ace Rep. So the main character of that is Ace, and then the sequel is beside it, Undeniable, that just came out about a month ago. And then in the spring, my solo debut novel, not co-written, will come out, and that one's a fantasy heist. So it's very much like a tale of social justice um, and inequality that is not okay. And the heist is part of protesting against that system. So it's kind of swashbuckling and fun, but also has an arrow ace protagonist. So yeah, it's super fun.
That is awesome. I'm so glad to hear. And yeah, as you said, Ace Rep has been really, really, really poor for many years. It's, slowly changing, but we still have a long way to go, unfortunately, particularly in mainstream media, which I go on so many rants about all the time on this podcast, for sure.
Understandable. I mean, yeah, same. I mean that's part of why this podcast exists. It's an educational resource for people's community. And I mean, it's like one of those things, right? Where, I mean, I assume, right? Like, it's like if it does not exist, someone has to build it. We have to build our
Hmm.
own. And so, I feel the same way. Like, I'm sort of a scrappy early career writer, but I mean, I'm not gonna have ace characters. I don't know how to write anything else, honestly. Those like
Totally
10
fair.
novels that didn't get published, they all have ace main characters too, because I just thought that was how everybody was.
Yeah.
Oops. Like, what is all of this other stuff? It's got to be a joke. It's like a big joke everybody's in on. Yeah.
Are you able to talk a little bit about some of the ace representation in your work, and how does that come up in the books a bit?
Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of value in coming out stories. Um, and that's not what I've written thus far, at least. Um, because I think there's also value in stories that are just like fun stories that happen to have queer people doing adventures. So that's really all of what I've written. So in the thriller series, which is called the Grigori Cycle, the main character, this one is set in modern day. It's actually set in Cleveland, Ohio, which I've been told is the most mysterious city in Ohio, question mark. I don't know. Maybe chat can verify. My co-author's from there, so I trust them. Um, but yeah, the main character's sister is missing, and so this is her search for her sister, and that is the plot. She along the way comes is searching alongside a friend. The friend at one point is like, "Hey, maybe we could date." It comes across more naturally, I think, in the story than me just blurting this, but and she's like, I have something to tell you. So that's really sort of the moment where it's explicitly stated. But yeah, I mean, it's not about that. It's not about queer trauma. It's not about any of that. It's just about being a person trying to accomplish this rather intense goal with magical beings and immortals, and she's not any of those. Just trying to get through and find how her sister's disappearance is connected to this weird magic society. Um, and then the heist, which is called Flightless, that one's set in like a fantasy world. Um, and it was really there's really beautiful writing on this topic by a number of queer and trans authors, but my favorite is probably from Charlie Jane Anders' book called Never Say You Can't Survive. It's a like a writing guidance book or writing, I don't know what you call it, but it's nonfiction. And in the prologue of that, Charlie Jane writes about how when we live in a world that has injustices in it, one of the very beautiful things about writing, especially speculative works, but really anything that is escapism for people, is that like it's very loving to take people on a journey somewhere where, yeah, there's problems in this fictional world, but like the problem isn't necessarily like racism or transphobia or like whatever, and that we can demonstrate through our writing that like, hey, maybe this is possible and this is something that we can create in our own worlds, in our own lives, in our own communities. And so that's sort of the framing that I carried into that book. So it's a very diverse cast in sort of every imaginable way. And the problem is not gender. The problem is not race. The problem is not sexuality. The problem is that there's economic injustices and that there are laws that prevent certain people from certain rights. And and so yeah, it's pushing back against that system, because to me that's a bigger problem for us to actually address IRL. And so it was fun to kind of get to play around with that in a fantasy world. So.
I mean, you could also argue that many of these economic injustices have links to all these other forms of injustice as well. So it's,
Absolutely.
I don't think they exist in isolation in any way.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, there's of all the billionaires in the world, you know, how many of them are people of color? How many of them are trans? How many are, you know, queer in any way?
Not many.
I don't have the exact numbers, but I don't think it's
No,
very many. But
no.
yeah, no, you're right. So it's yeah, so that's sort of my vibe in terms of what I write is queer people going on adventures, and their queerness is just a part of them. It's not necessarily even the most important part of them. It is just part of who they are, and it's part of the story. But
Hmm.
it's not necessarily the point of the story. And again, I do think there's a huge amount of value in like coming out stories, or stories that talk about overcoming injustices that are linked to sexuality and gender. That's just not what I happen to have published yet. So
Yeah. I do like the you know, the stories where the characters are ace, they are queer, but that's not their primary identity in the book. The, you know, a lot of the one-dimensional flat queer representation in media, it's like the one thing is that they are queer. The one thing is they are ace, and that's the only thing we know about them. And it's like, can they not do something else in as well?
tokenism is rampant, and I think it's like you'll see in these writing communities, it's like, how do I write a woman convincingly? And it's like, well, you could think of her as a person, like who has a lot of things about them
Mm-hmm.
in addition to the fact that they're a woman. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And I feel like the same thing happens where it's like, this
Yeah.
character is gay, and that is the thing about them.
Mm-hmm.
That is the thing.
No.
Okay. Well, does he like gardening? Like, I don't know.
Exactly. I mean, all of us have multiple aspects to our identity. I'm, you know, Aero Ace spec, but I'm also a PhD candidate. I do lots of things beyond just being Aero Ace.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. All of us can point to many a hobby. I think we'll talk about video games maybe later.
Yeah,
Like,
I
there's
think
so
that'll
much
be
to
coming
all of
up a
us,
little bit
right? So,
later. I'm looking forward
yeah,
to
sorry,
that.
preview.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
And we
Yeah.
already talked about this, but I really do find it great to see, ace characters where asexuality isn't necessarily the central theme. Because to me, that feels more realistic. Because all of us have multiple aspects to our identity. And it's refreshing to see that sort of representation that isn't just tokenism, but it's like, just a part of their being.
Yeah. I love that I turn to literal fantasy novels for authentic ace and arrow representation. It's like, yeah, this is more authentic to the character. And also people are flying. It's fine. It's normal.
Do you have any favorite ace representation in broader media that's inspired you or that speaks to you?
Um, yeah, there is some, I think the most touching moment, because I didn't know it was coming at all, was in the video game Outer Worlds, um, with the character of Parvati. I I cried when I saw that because it was so unexpected and so lovely. And not I don't think, and this is very like side character stuff, but there's like a romance plot with this character too. And so I think that was really nice to show like, hey, this is still accessible for ace spec people who want it. And so that was just like, it was lovely, and she's just such a sweet character, and so to have such like loving rep um really warmed my heart. So that's one of my favorites. And I don't know how many folks in the chat have played that game, but or if you've played it, Tell You White, but it's a good one.
I don't think I have. I will have to look into that. You'll have to send
Yeah,
me that.
so if you're yeah, if you to me it's kind of like um if Firefly the TV show met Fallout.
Yeah.
Except that the baddies are corporations and sort of like the center of this galaxy, and you're kind of on these outer rim planets that the corporations own all of, but of course there are people also operating outside of that system. Um, and so kind of like Firefly, like you're the captain of this kind of battered ship, and you're assembling a crew that's sort of ragtag, and they have a bunch of different stories and motivations and desires and goals. And so Parvati she's sort of the Kaylee character in terms of her job function. She's like the mechanic. But she is Ace and apparently not Arrow. And yeah, her story is just very sweet. She's definitely like the shining part of that ship in terms of the characters. So I'm pretty sure it's a one player game, and I think they just came out with like a sequel game to it. People get it confused with Outer Wilds. It's not, which I hear is also fabulous. It's Outer Worlds.
I'd not heard that before. I'm definitely gonna have to check it out. If there's anybody that's in the chat here today that has played it, feel free to let us know. Let us know your thoughts. Or if you have any ace representation that speaks to you, always would love to hear your perspectives as well. Because I'm
Yeah.
always
I
searching for new ace rep to see.
Yeah, I think I could be wrong about this, but I think that game came out around 2020, 2021, and there were things kind of overshadowing new games
Yes.
at that point.
Yeah, that's
Um,
understandable.
or maybe slightly just before it. It was like right around then, and I think like the publicity around it was kind of disrupted.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean it is very much like a first person like adventure shooter. And so like I think the fact that there is this like tender story in the middle
Mm-hmm.
of it makes it even more impactful. And the fact that I don't know. I don't know much about it. I probably should have looked up more into it before chatting with you about it, but from what I understood, at least some people on the development team or maybe the writing team um, were ace and wanted to make sure that that representation was in there. So that's that one. That's a good one.
Absolutely. I definitely going to be checking that out for sure.
Yay.
We have so many examples of bad representation, so it's always nice to hear about the good representation that's a little less common.
Yeah, unfortunately so. But yeah, that's my plug because I hadn't heard it mentioned on the show, so I was
No,
like, I wonder if you
absolutely.
know about it.
Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
I typically have, well, only read I typically read a lot more nonfiction, so I'm much more familiar with, we'll talk about it later, but books like Ace by Angela Chen and Refusing Compulsory Sexuality by Sharonda J. Brown and all those books. But I'm a lot less familiar with the fiction side of things.
Yeah. The other one that is fiction that I love, being a fantasy author, so Brandon Sanderson has written basically the Marvel universe of books, and so it's very overwhelming to try to break into
Mm-hmm.
where do I start reading? Forgive me if y'all already talked about this on the podcast. But in his Stormlight Archive series, which is his sort of it's this biggest series, literally. I mean, the books are huge. Um, there's a major secondary character who is canonically Ace. And I think one of the things that I really appreciate about it is that, again, she's treated with so much respect. She's literally a queen, and very intelligent and very uh, like cunning, but not in a bad way. I don't have the right word for that, but like just has a lot of forethought and insight. Yeah, so I mean, she's like a really cool character. People like her because she's highly competent, um, and also this is part of her as well. So again, not even the main thing. It's like you've known this character for like 3 books, I think, before it's confirmed. So again, yeah, it's very much just like this is just a part of the fabric of that character and of that world. And so I appreciate that one as well.
Definitely, yeah.
Yay. And if anybody ever is like, how do I start reading Sanderson books? Just reach out to me. I will help you. Because it does feel like an impenetrable wall of pages. Hello, the chat is waking up.
People are starting to come in, yeah.
Hello.
Welcome on in, Warrior for Life 9761. So something, we haven't talked a whole lot about, I've alluded to it on the podcast, but a lot of the folks, wow, apparently Warrior for Life 9761 is a huge fan of your books.
Oh, aw, that's so kind. I don't get that very much because I'm a tiny author.
Aw,
So thank you. That's very sweet.
that's amazing. I did not know that.
Yay. Well, yeah, you'll have a new one to enjoy in April. So
It's exciting.
yay. Aw. Yeah, I do this too. I also like to look for small authors. I love me some Brandon Sanderson. That is not a small time name
No.
in the fantasy world. I love all, but yeah, it does sort of mean the world to early career writers when people are open to reading somebody who doesn't have like New York Times bestseller by their name.
Mm-hmm.
So appreciate your support and your effort because that is not always easy to find those names. So
No, absolutely not. And it's not the same, but I would say that I go out of my way, on the Twitch side of things to look out for, smaller Twitch communities and, drop
yeah.
by and, say hi. And because I know how much as a small Twitch streamer myself, it means for people to come by and chat. So absolutely can appreciate that.
Totally. Spreading the love. It's good.
Absolutely. So I've, alluded to it myself, approaching 40 and not having anybody that I know of who was openly ace in school. It wasn't until much later into my 20s that I really came to really understand asexuality as a part of my identity. And it was really not until I was in my 30s, early 30s, that I came out. And I know several people from, the Aces and STEM server, which was one of the first Ace discords that I joined, who had a very similar trajectory, who are similar age to me, where they didn't have any Ace representation. They didn't have the language growing up. And so it wasn't until much later into their 20s that they really came out and really understood that part of their identity. And obviously,
That's
you've mentioned the challenges of coming out as ace long before, any of the online resources we have access to today existed. And I can certainly believe that there are many folks out listening on the podcast side of things that can probably resonate with many of these challenges.
yes, definitely. I mean, to be honest, I don't think I ever heard the term outside of like biology class, not meaning
Mm-hmm.
the same thing we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
until I was in my 30s. Um, so I was never super chronically online. I'm still not really. Um, although that's more for like mental health at this point than anything. But like I didn't get internet in my house until I think 11th grade. Um, and so I'm also approaching 40. In fact, in 3 days I will be 40. So it's close. So I think that makes me just a smidge older than you probably, but like similar life experience and similar like sort of what the world was like when we were growing up.
For sure.
And so I don't have like the full history in my head of Avon or anything like that, but I feel like when people were starting to talk about it online, it was maybe like 2010 or something. I have that date in my head. Does that sound right to you?
So Avon first appeared in 2001 out of the
Oof,
My Life as a Human Amoeba,
that's
I
earlier than I
think, which
thought.
was a
Okay.
blog in 1997. And then
Okay.
it
So
became
much earlier than I thought.
Haven for the Human Amoeba in 2001. And I think 2002 is when Avon kind of evolved out of Human for the Human Amoeba, or the Haven for the Human Amoeba.
Got it. Yeah, I just missed all of it somehow.
I
They
did
were
too.
they were great resources.
I missed all of it too. I really did not come across it until much later into the, 2017, 2018s.
Yeah, exactly. And so I didn't I just thought I was broken and messed up. Like I would enjoy dating until all of a sudden I really didn't. Um and that kept happening and I'm like what is wrong with me? Something's wrong with me. And actually ended up getting married. And it was really 9 years into that marriage. So I was probably math, 35 or so. That's when I came across somehow, I don't know how, I came across the term asexuality and immediately was like, that's me. That is me. Um, and it took a little bit longer to sort of figure out what that meant. But I think it actually gave I can't speak for him, but I think it gave my ex and me some language around some incompatibilities and some frustrations that I think was helpful for both of us. Um, And there were other reasons why we weren't maybe the best match in the world, but I think it helped us understand ourselves both better and us both understand me better, and ultimately led to a divorce. And so really, if you're doing the math, that was like 5 years ago. So this is quite fresh and new for me. And that, and then now I can go back and I can piece together the clues, right? Like those 10 novels I wrote that all had ace main characters. Or just how like the challenges of navigating the dating world while experiencing a sexuality that I didn't know existed and didn't have a name for and didn't have community around. Those things now I can like look back and be like, well, duh, of course. But like you don't know what you don't know, and you don't you yeah, I mean there's just no way to know
Mm-hmm.
what you don't know. Um, so yeah, it was yeah, I mean, we talk about navigating asexual in the pre-Tumblr era, but like I maybe still have never been on Tumblr. Like how do the olds do this? How do and then like, I'll tell people, yeah, this is my sexuality. These are people who are like in their 60s, 70s, and they're like, "Oh, honey, nobody actually desires anyone." And I'm like, "I have news for you." Like these people are on Tumblr, How like there's aces of every age.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Aces have existed for forever, for eternity.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just we didn't talk about it in the way that we talk about it now. And the language around asexuality that we use in the podcast and in many of the communities that I'm in is a very Western take on asexuality. And so there's actually a discourse of asexuality versus asexualities, which is an interesting one to think about, which is looking at how, you know, ace identities have existed for eternity, and also some of the intersectional identities within, the ace community that are not accounted for within this very Western definition of asexuality. Uh, So that's something that, is really interesting to me. And, this is what the podcast really tries to get at is you can't really understand asexuality without accounting for that, those intersectional identities that go alongside with it.
Yeah. And I think, you mentioned Ace by Angela Chen. I know that title gets brought up a lot on this podcast, but to me, that's one of the most powerful parts of that book is that it's not just a book about asexuality or asexualities. It's a book about intersectionality. It's a book about feminism. It's a book about, I mean, disability and I mean all sorts of things. I think that book would serve anyone to read. Um, but I think, yeah, you throw in A-spec stuff and things do get like more complicated for sure, as do any identity when you're talking about intersectionality.
Absolutely. And, to see folks like um, Yasmin Benoit and just how difficult
Yeah.
her journey has been, and just how much misogynoir gets thrown at her for being ace. And it's not like, I mean, she talks about the fact that, this is what ace looks like, but it wasn't, and she's talked about this many times, but it wasn't her necessarily trying to troll anybody. It's literally that's the outfit she wants to wear, and that's what makes her feel the most authentic. And why should your sexuality be determined by what you wear? Like, that's just absurd to think about. But the fact that,
Exactly.
um, unfortunately, black femmes are hypersexualized, and it just makes it so much worse for Yasmin Benoit. And so you can't talk about asexuality without accounting for intersectionality.
Absolutely. And I think there's parts of that that are connected with my own realization, like my own coming out to myself, right? Um, Around things like mental health and trauma. And again, I really appreciate that Angela Chen talks about those in ACE and talks about this idea of like, well, does if someone's existing with trauma, um, and asexuality, does this, people worry, does this somehow negate it? Does it explain it? And I really love the answer in the book, which is like, does it matter? Like, it doesn't matter. That these are two different aspects of ourselves, and yeah, it doesn't negate anything.
No,
It certainly doesn't not negate one's authenticity.
absolutely not.
Yeah. So yeah, that one's still one that I wrestle with sometimes, to be honest. But yeah, ultimately I've just decided it doesn't matter to me either. So I'm a person who exists with some trauma in the background. I think maybe all of us exist with trauma in our backgrounds and maybe in our current moments as well. And yeah, we can still be ace or arrow or ace spec or whatever.
Exactly.
So
Absolutely.
yeah.
And one of the very common things that comes up time and time again with an ace discourse within this podcast is, asexuality as the invisible, so-called invisible orientation, and the fact that it is so incredibly hard to find ace community. How did you find ace community yourself? How did that
Yeah.
go about for you?
Yeah, since I am not a Tumblr person. Nothing against it. I don't know, it feels overwhelming and I don't know where to start or navigate it. So, yeah, for me it was writing community. So, I I mentioned I work with Writing Excuses. I manage their annual retreat on a cruise ship, which is a pretty fun job. And um, they have a series of affinity groups for specific identities, or life experiences. And so one of those is an LGBTQ group. So the first year I went in 2019, I did not identify as queer in any way because I hadn't heard of the term asexual. So I didn't go to the meetup group. I was a student at that time. For the first 2 or 3 years, I was a student, and then I came on as staff. Second year, that's when I'd had my realization, and I was still in my relationship, but I was starting to wrestle with it. So I not wrestle with it in the terms of combative, just thinking about it, mulling over, trying to figure out what that meant for me, looking at like sub labels, things like that. And so I went to the group, and um, I discovered there's a few other people who were going to this group who identified as aspec, and that was exciting. And I had some people to talk to about it. And I guess 2020, actually, that was the year we didn't have it because of the pandemic. So it would have been 2021. So then 2022, that's the point at which, I don't know, time is fuzzy. That's the year when I, is this true? 23, yeah, this is my last year as a student, and decided, you know what, I'm gonna do, like, I've been here long enough now that I kind of know the community. I'm one of those people who, like, the first year I do a thing, I like just stand on the back wall and observe, and then by the end of it, I'm like, volunteering as the vice president of the club or whatever. That's kind of the person I am. And so I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna arrange a little like Arrow Ace lunch. So anybody who, feels like those identities are close to their own identity, please come, we'll hang out. And there were, I think, 7 of us who showed up at this table. We kept having to find more chairs. I thought it was going to be like 3 people maybe. And one of them started crying because she's like, I've never been around this many ace people before. And yeah, so it's become an annual tradition that we do this now. And um, it's really like this last year we took up like a really long table. If anyone's ever done Royal Caribbean and you go in the Windjammer and you like on the sides as you're coming in, there's these tables that could probably fit like 12 people, these like long, tall tables. We took up a whole one this year. And it's amazing. We stay in touch in Discord between events and have, like a LGBTQ affinity group within that. And so we're all staying in touch all the time. And we get to share our writing with each other and our celebrations with each other and our challenges. And so it's really lovely to have that shared space and a set of shared experiences, right? Because like as we've been saying, just like with characters, their sexuality isn't the only thing about them. It's the same for us as humans. And so we have that in common, and we also have the fact that we're writers in common and that we are part of this community in common. So that's like already really great grounds for a friendship. And then beyond that, you get to learn about each other and support each other. So that's been huge. I only get to see them once a year, and it's not all of them because this event is not free. And so not everybody is able to come every year, or like the timing doesn't work out. But there's always new people. And now every time I do the Arrow Ace lunch, new folks show up, and sometimes they're like long time comers, and sometimes they're like new faces, but it's really, really fun. So that's where I really get my Ace community. I don't know if I have any, maybe like one or two local friends. Maybe some people who haven't come out to me potentially. I don't know. But like, yeah, it's really mostly through the writing community. And so they're all over the world, really. And we all just gather in one spot once a year.
That's awesome. That really warmed my heart hearing. And it's amazing to, find these events where you're like, holy crap, I didn't know all these people existed. And to have them all, come together and realize, holy crap, there's others like me that I had no idea about was
Yeah.
is always an amazing feeling. It was like me last year on the Arrow Ace raid train here on Twitch. So if for those that are not familiar with a raid train, typically how they work is that there's a central theme of the event, and you have streamers that will stream, for a 2 or 3 hour slot, and then everybody brings their community over to the next person that streams, on this theme, who then brings it to the next person. You continue for like a week or two, and the Ace and Arrow train, I believe, if I remember correctly, because this is going back to the summer of 2024 now, was a 2 week long Pride train. And I met so many amazing folks, many of whom have now appeared on the podcast, many of whom, went on to make the Spoon Platoon that I'm a part of as a, disabled content creator. Like that was like one of the major parts of, my growth here on Twitch was that one event. So it's amazing how these one-off events happen to become so momentous and important, for community growth.
You're you're convincing me I need to be on Twitch more.
There's lots of us. We just hide.
Yay.
We just hide. We're in, these small little corners that aren't always visible unless you know where to look.
Yeah, it's so true. So I just got I one of my jobs is I work at the University of New Mexico, and one of our perks is that you can get discounted tickets to Broadway plays that come to the theater at the campus. So last this past week, I don't know what time is recently, went to see Chicago, and that song Mr. Cellophane about like being see-through, right? Like people see right through me, they walk right by me, don't even know I'm there. That's kind of how I feel about the ace community sometimes, unless we make concerted efforts to shine lights on ourselves, because I think we are kind of invisible in a lot. And so it's just so important that you all do events like that, and the little Ace Arrow luncheon that could on the cruise ship once a year and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Like Yeah, we have to make our own path.
Absolutely. And you talk about the fact that the this Ace and Arrow cruise luncheon, there's many folks with many shared identities in that group. That brings me back to thinking about the Aces in STEM Discord that really kind of first got me thinking about my own identity and becoming more comfortable with coming to terms with my own ASPEC identity, and how helpful it was to meet a group of mostly academics working in STEM oriented fields who were ASPEC, and so many of these multiple identities that we share was really important for my own growth. So that really kind of.
Yeah, because these are folks who know also like the pain of submitting a paper to a journal or
Mm-hmm.
going through a higher ed or,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, working in a similar type of environment.
Yeah,
You have a
absolutely.
lot to, yeah, a lot in common to begin with.
And
That's really cool.
one of the folks that appeared on episode 13 of the podcast, Sarah Cosgriff, does some amazing science communication talks where they incorporate discussions of asexuality into discussions around science. And it's
Oh,
absolutely amazing how they're able to integrate those two things. Highly
that's cool. I
recommend
need to go
checking
back and
out
listen.
Sarah Cosgriff on Blue Sky and on the socials if you haven't done already. I'll grab their link here because they have been super instrumental for my own growth as a content creator.
Amazing.
That's their they go by Ace Sci-Com on Blue Sky and on the socials.
Awesome. I just clicked. Everyone should.
Good to see you, Pseudo Suga. How are you doing today? So yeah, Aces in STEM was really instrumental for me. And that was really the first ACE community that I joined. And then I started to find, at least locally here, I I joined what was initially a meetup group, um, which was sort of, we would meet every so often on a Zoom call, basically, and it would happen once every couple months, and we'd just meet and chat about you know our ace identities, and sometimes chat about many of the topics I now talk about on the podcast. And then at that time, I was just a participant. And shortly after joining, this meetup group actually joined and merged with the organization that I now work for as a co facilitator. And they absorbed this meetup group, which became the Ace and Arrow support group that I now run. And shortly after joining the organization, the original founder stepped down, and I took over as the leader of that support group that we've now been running for 3 years, and it's amazing to have had that opportunity to create this community and to see the growth from a few people in the beginning to a group that now regularly brings in 10 or more folks once a month.
That's amazing. And the fact that you found them and joined at the perfect time to be able to deepen your relationship with them is really, really cool. It felt
Absolutely.
similar for me for writing excuses. And it's a reminder to me that, like, there probably is community here in my local community. I mean, not everybody has that.
No.
But I think Albuquerque's probably big enough. That it's out there. I don't know if we're organized, but
Mm-hmm.
these things don't get organized out of nothing. Somebody starts
No.
them, right? And
Exactly.
so maybe we're the one.
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
that support group is actually one of the two main inspirations, the other being that Ace and Arrow train I was a part of last summer for the podcast. Is initially when the support group started, it now has kind of changed its purpose and become more of a support group dynamic. But initially, we ran it as more of a discussion group, and we talked about so many of the things that we talk about on the podcast. But I would say in the last year or so, we've decided to move it to more of a support group dynamic, because we feel that's a better fit for most of the folks in the community there, and that serves
Yeah.
their needs more.
Were you finding that the conversation was sort of naturally leaning into more of a support group
Yeah,
kind of conversation?
yeah,
Yeah.
we were noticing that, and um, a lot of the folks joining, they had only recently come to understand their own identity, or they had never found an ACE community before, and so they had a lot of questions about, ACE identity, and they were really just looking for support. And so we felt like it was a better fit to run it more like a support group. And so over time, it's
Mm.
kind of shifted to more of that dynamic. And so that's how we run it now.
Super cool. And I'm sure very valuable. And yeah, I can see why they tapped into your support also.
Absolutely. And I'm so honored to have been working there now for 3 years and to have that opportunity to co-lead this group. And it's been really, really important for my own growth too.
Yeah,
And then not
very
only
cool.
that, but just 60 miles down the road, I know of two other Ace and Arrow organizations that I will interact with, when I get the opportunity to go to Toronto. So I'm really, really lucky in that regard, because I know
Mhm.
so many Ace and Arrow folks online who have no in person, no local support groups to access.
Yeah, I guess I may be one of those, but I'm not convinced they're not here. I just know that I don't know about them, but I haven't gone looking too hard. But I know a lot of people live in like more rural areas or things like
Mm-hmm.
that where there just aren't options.
No.
So, in that case, online community even more important.
Absolutely, absolutely. We are coming up to an ad break here. So this may be a natural point to take a quick bio break for a couple minutes, and then we'll maybe come back and continue our discussion and eventually move into a topic that many of us here on Twitch enjoy as gamers. So
Yay!
why don't we take a short little break here, and I'll see you back in 5 minutes, maybe. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right.
All right.
Welcome back, folks. Thanks for sticking around through the ad break. Marie has shared the link to the Outer Worlds game that she was talking about towards the beginning of the episode here. And for those listening on the podcast as well as on the YouTube side of things, I'll be posting that in the description as well, so that you can grab that at your own convenience.
Yeah,
So,
and I actually wanted to say one other thing about that game while we're talking about it, if that's
yeah.
okay. The other thing that I loved, excuse me, about that conversation with the character who comes out to you as Ace, she's like a member of your team, she's on your crew, on your ship, like she's part of your kind of found family. And she comes out to you, and you, the player character, have different options of how to respond. Like, oh, thank you for telling me, or, whatever. One of the options is me too.
Oh, wow.
So that game actually has potentially two A-spec characters, Parvati and yourself. Um, and that is the moment where I started crying.
Oh wow, that
Playing
is
that game.
amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's like a small
Absolutely.
moment in a big game, but really, really huge.
Absolutely. I have never seen anything like that in the game in a game before. That is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, so I'd forgot I don't know how I forgot that because that was, like, the coolest thing ever, but yeah.
Absolutely. I know folks on the, in the chat have talked about some of their favorite video game ace rep, and I've written it down, and I think it's linked in some of the podcasts, but at some point I need to go back through and just create like a master list of all the different rep that we've talked about on the podcast, because it's too easy to lose track of it all, because everybody has such great um, you know, suggestions, and then I get super busy and just forget about it, unfortunately.
Yes, that would be really cool to have a roundup, but, I suspect that, you know, when somebody's into reading books, they're gonna keep wanting to read more books. When somebody's into gaming, they wanna do more games. So I think, yeah, for those if whenever there are resources like that and we can use our online communities to share them with each other, and you may not have to reinvent the wheel. I wouldn't be surprised if something's out there already. But that's so huge because yeah, it's already a medium that you like. So um yeah, I'm excited to keep finding more of it in the wild, but if it can be curated, all the better. That one just blew me away because it was unexpected. Like I had no idea it was coming.
Absolutely. I believe there
I
was
spoiled the surprise.
no
Sorry.
worries. No worries. I believe at one point there was a really great online resource that had, gone through and compiled a bunch of different Ace and Arrow representations in media. But if I remember correctly, somebody mentioned that resource is no longer or something. The website died or whatever it was.
Oh no.
I need to remember what it was, but apparently it's no longer, so we may have to reinvent the wheel to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, as I uh as I listen back, I'm like listening back to old episodes of the prior episodes, I should say, of this podcast and others. So if I find things, I'll send them to you.
Definitely. Thank you.
We can all share the work.
Absolutely. It's really great to find out new rap, because I
Yeah.
typically only know about the nonfiction rap, and that's my kind of what I typically know best. But I don't know much about ace rap in manga or in video games and other sources necessarily.
Yeah, because your time is finite.
Exactly. I only have so much time to devote outside
Yes,
of
exactly.
exam proctoring or invigilation, as we call it in Canada and over in Europe. The
Wait, it's called what?
PhD invigilation. So it's called proctoring in the US, but
Yeah,
in the UK, they'll use the term invigilation, which we sometimes use in Canada as well. That's basically
interesting.
somebody
I
that
didn't know that.
supervises exams.
That is a I did as you know, I read a lot. I liked, I come across a lot of British and Canadian authors and um, have spent a little time in Canada. I spent a semester in Britain. You would think that like I would have come across all of the discrepancies between the US's particular vernacular. Nope, that's a new one. All right. My
Now you
favorite
know.
though is still Garburator. I'm sorry.
Invigilator.
No, no, it's good. No, I was saying my
Yeah.
favorite one is the Garber. Is that what's called Garburator?
Yeah. That's a Canadian
Yeah,
term. Yeah.
that's one of my faves.
Yeah. I use that. We used to have one of those growing up, and yeah, we always called it a garburator.
It tickles me because it makes me think of a carburetor, which is
It
much
does.
larger.
Yeah. What is it? What do you call it in the US then? one of those in sync.
We call it a like a garbage disposal or like a sink disposal.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Not
I
sure
guess.
where the garburator term came from.
It's very charming. I like it. I don't know. I think generally the terms that the US comes up for that are discrepancies just are more bland in general. So I don't know. Yeah, I feel like we've sacrificed all of our charm in language and architecture and all the things. Oh well.
Yep. I typically swap back and forth a lot of the time. I think between the US terminology and the British terminology, I think that's just the reality of living in Canada, having, so
Yeah.
much US information and so much US influence right next door. You adopt it inevitably, but you've still got that, the British influence that's typically taught in school growing up.
Yeah. Yeah, you all are sort of pulled between the two with also your own culture, obviously.
Hmm. And we've
And I
got,
think,
our own terms like toque, and if
yes.
you're in the prairies, we don't use it here in Ontario, but in the prairies, they'll call a hoodie a bunny hug.
See, charming, charming.
So yeah, there's
uh,
definitely some unique terms that we have.
very, very cool.
That's mostly just a prairies thing. Nobody else uses that
Hmm.
term.
I mean, maybe I will now in the desert because it's very cute.
It's great. I personally think it's great.
Yeah.
So now you know if you're
Well,
in Calgary or if you're in Saskatoon, it's a bunny hug.
bunny hug. I won't look at someone with question marks in my eyes. What? I don't know what that is, but I want it.
Did you have anything more you wanted to talk about with regards to Ace by Angela Chen?
Oh, it's been a while since I read it, but I think those were the things that really stood out to me, what I mentioned earlier about like it being a book about intersectionality just as much as about asexuality to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it has a special place in my heart also, just because it was the first book on asexuality that I read after I came across the term. And what a loving way to be introduced to the community and insightful and yeah, and I think very healing too, especially with that conversation around trauma. So I highly recommend it to folks who may not have read it yet. And I think for me, I may be due for a reread. But yeah, that was what I wanted to say about it, I think. But I'm happy to go deeper if you'd like.
I'm happy to talk about it as well. It was one of my favorite Ace books. That and this one here, Refusing Compulsory Sexuality by Sharonda J. Brown. Those two are probably two of my favorite Ace books. Um, this one in particular really focuses on um, the black asexual intersectionality. And I learned a lot. This one is really, I think Angela Chen's is written in a little bit more friendly terminology and a little bit more um, accessible to most folks, whereas this one is very, I would say, borderline academic and feels more like an academic treatise than a more typical like nonfiction book. So it's pretty dry. It's not ever going to be everybody's cup of tea, but I learned a heck of a lot from this book here. As you
Yeah,
can
no, that's
see
a
on
great
the title,
recommendation.
it's very academic in its
Yeah.
treatise.
I think that's where I learned the term compulsory sexuality. It was from Angela Chen, but I would love to dive in deeper. So I'm definitely going to check that out.
Yeah,
And man, that just changed everything in my brain. Learning that
absolutely.
term, compulsory sexuality, and realizing too, like how much that had played in my life and the lives of so many people or young, like older than me, people who, you know, who lived their whole lives without hearing any of these concepts. And I think back to all the moments in my life where I just thought something's wrong with me. What's wrong with me? And thinking, what a I hope that folks found peace with themselves, and didn't ask that question, because man, it is so much freedom to not have to ask that question anymore. I still struggle with depression and anxiety, but it's not because of that anymore. And that's such a gift. Like these books are a gift.
Absolutely. Finally having that language, finally realizing that, hey, it's me, and this is uniquely how I am, is
Yeah.
was so freeing, and to not worry about having to try to pull myself to fit within the societal definitions of what a life should look like, and to now purposely reject that has been so freeing. Like I like to go beyond saying compulsory sexuality and also say compulsory romance, because that's a huge part of it.
Yes.
The two are so intertwined in discussions around relationships.
Yeah. I think I think that the Arrow Ace conversation has the power to provide incredible healing to everyone on this planet. And I think it's because of several reasons. This is like one of my people are like, "Hey, what's your little 5-second TED talk?" Like this is mine, right? Which is like queerness, but I think like even more so Arrow Ace identities can help heal the world. And I think part of that is because we have had to interrogate these compulsory parts of society, and we've our community grants us the language and the frameworks to interrogate whether those are right for us. And so that means we're able to build lives. It's not easy necessarily, but we can build lives that are right for us, which anybody can do. Anybody on this planet can do, right? But we've had to ask these questions because something in us already shakes the foundation of what is considered normative, right? But I think beyond that, the fact that we also are able to look at like there's so many different types of attraction, right? That we are able to distinguish these sort of finer shades of attraction, um, romantic, sexual, intellectual, whatever it
Aesthetic,
is. Yes, like there's so many forms, and we can see these little shades of color where somebody might see green. We see like, oh, there's moss green and there's apple green and there's, whatever. And so that I think is also so amazing because I mean, I'm sure there are people in this world who are like their romantic attraction and their sexual attraction don't necessarily align perfectly, and they're like, why do I keep getting into these relationships where things are falling apart slightly over this? There's this weird mismatch. But like if they had the language, if they had the framework that we have, then maybe they would understand themselves better and be able to create a life that's better suited for them. And so I think we have a gift to share with the world because this is true of everybody, regardless of gender, sexuality, attraction, like romantic orientation, any of it. Like it doesn't matter. I think everybody, we're all humans. And so we don't we're not the only ones who can see apple green. I think everyone can see apple green. You know what I mean? I mean, in terms of my analogy there. So,
Absolutely. This book I am so excited to read. It just came out this year. It's called Love Expanded: How Asexuals and Aromantics Are Redefining Love, Life, and Family by Ren Berg. And that really touches on what you just said right there.
I just screenshot that for myself.
I am so excited to read this. I just haven't had the opportunity yet.
Yeah.
But I think this will really kind of delve into many of those things you just mentioned there.
Yeah. I
As
get excited about it.
as aspecs, we are forced to ask these questions that others take for granted, and so we already
Yeah.
just from the get-go challenge those normative views on relationships. And so I think a lot of us think about it a lot more than the general populace does. And so I think, as you said, we have this unique viewpoint where we're able to challenge and say, hey, wait a minute, why is this the norm? Why does this have to be the way it has to be?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think everyone can do this. You know, the person who identifies as the straightest of the straight person, like they also are privy to these nuances and they are able to think about like what is aesthetic attraction for them, what is romantic attraction for them, what is sexual attraction for them, etc. Like we all have the opportunity to dive into a deeper understanding of ourselves and what is right for our lives. So yeah, to me it's um there's something really, really special about the frameworks that come with questioning. I think it comes through trial by fire for many of us because at least maybe those of us who are who learned about our identities later in life, but maybe all of us, I don't know. But again, I think it's a gift to the world at the end of the day. I don't know if the world sees it that way, but I do.
Absolutely. There's so much that as aspects that we are able to, and we're maybe slowly are teaching the world.
Yeah. That's why we need more rep.
Absolutely.
Yay.
I mean,
More
at,
good rep.
at least, the general populace, it's still problematic, but at least the general populace at least has some idea about what asexuality means now, thanks to the amazing work of folks like Yasmin Benoit and all the amazing advocates. Aromanticism still has a long way to go, unfortunately.
Does. Absolutely. Which is, I think, why for now, it's the same reason that like my co-author and I decided to explicitly use the term asexual in our book. Um, I think that because asexuality has made more inroads with the general populace, it behooves us to bring along aromanticism into the conversation as much as possible. Because
Absolutely.
as much as we're getting a spotlight on one term and one identity, like we need to make sure that it's all under the spotlight. So
Absolutely. And
yeah.
I love the work that, like Cody Diaglorians, aka A Stat Advice, and you know,
Yes.
they're doing some great stuff to really bring along, hey, wait a minute, let's also talk about aromanticism.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I
I
would
think
say
they're
that most of the folks I've talked to on the podcast have, tend to be more comfortable talking about their lived experience of asexuality. But whenever I can, I really do like to talk about aromanticism because it just doesn't get enough discussion overall.
yeah. I think that's one where I'm still trying to figure myself out. And it's for some reason the asexuality was easier for me to peg down. Like I read a description, I understood it and identified. And something about aromanticism, um, it's I think it for me at least, it's harder to peg down
Mm-hmm.
because we have all sorts of relationships in our
Mm-hmm.
lives and they're very important to us. And, at what point do you step into relationship anarchy? And at what point do you step into not that? And like, I don't know, like it's all very complicated and there's a
It
lot of,
is.
um, yeah. So that one, I still have question marks on myself around. And that's okay. That's just where I'm at right now.
Exactly. And, I would say that asexuality was the first thing that I came to understand. And for me, I know I'm somewhere under the gray umbrella of asexuality, but when I started to read into aromanticism, I'm like, oh yeah, that's me for sure. I just didn't really understand what it was at first. But looking back, it's
Mm,
like I just had no desire to date. It's like, why are people dating? Why do people want to go on dating apps? This seems so boring. And looking back
yeah.
at that, it's like there were a lot of clues along the way that I never picked up.
Yeah. No, I know. Like, I think the the compulsory everything, but especially romanticism of it all is so prevalent, so heavy, that if you don't ask the question, "Is this right for me?" Like, you will never know. You'll just be swept on into the current of what things people do, so easily, um, and can end up really unhappy as a result, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, it happens far too often.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad that you had that experience though of feeling like, "Oh, yeah, that one."
Yeah,
Me.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's when it is the gray, or dimmy or, like, any of the stuff that's sort of, like, floating in the in-betweens, that's where it's like, question marks,
Yeah,
like, I don't
yeah,
know.
absolutely. I know for sure I'm somewhere in the gray umbrella, the nebulous gray umbrella of asexuality, but I feel a lot more like, yeah, aromantic for sure is how I see myself.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I think I need to do more journaling, more reading.
It took a long time, but it was a lot of self-reflection, and I was talking with a counselor a while back, and there was actually two major life events that really contributed to me doing a lot of my own self-reflection. And the reason I wear these purple glasses was at the end of 2018, I suffered a major concussion that ended up leading to me taking a whole year off my PhD. And I had a lot of time to just self-reflect, and that's when it really started to click. I was starting to come across these communities. I couldn't spend a whole lot of time online, and so I made sure that the time I did, because I only could look at a screen for a very short period of time before getting very dizzy. That's why I had to take a whole year off. But it allowed for a lot of self-reflection. And looking back, I don't know if I would have ever come across these communities had it not been for that. And then a year later, of course, the pandemic and lockdowns. So it was like 2 years in a row of self-reflection that really kind of contributed to me coming to better understand a lot of this. That previous me
Thank you
would
for
have just
sharing.
shoved under the rug and forgotten about because I had to focus on the PhD.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, and yeah, our lives are so complicated. I thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting that, you decided when you were in the initial recovery from the concussion that you just said, the bit of time that I can handle being online, I want to spend it well. And what that meant to you was this understanding yourself better. I mean, that says something about where you were in that moment. It says something about your character. It says something about your thirst to better understand yourself.
Absolutely. And I don't think initially that was the intention. It just sort of happened. And then I think over time, I started to find these communities that helped me better understand myself.
Hmm.
So initially, I
That's
don't
really
think it was like I wasn't going out of my way to do this. It sort of just happened by osmosis. But then, I started to lean into that more and think about it, I think is how it kind of evolved.
yeah. And now you're a voice in it.
Exactly. And
Definitely an
looking
evolution.
back, I don't think we'd be sitting here today if it weren't for those two
Wow.
things, those two life moments, so to speak.
Wow, wow. Yeah, it's similar for me, I think. The pandemic, I think, was, I mean, obviously super challenging for every single person I know. Um, and remains so. Um, and that year, that was the year that I first heard the word asexual. I had a work experience where I was working more in the pandemic than I was before, and it hasn't really slowed down. Um, but I don't know, somehow I just came across the term at that time. That was a hard year. I suffered loss of a pet. I don't want to go into it too deeply because it's, I think, upsetting for me and maybe other people, but it was rough. And that was the year that I started having internal conversations around like maybe it's time to separate from my partner. Um, and and then the year after is when the separation and the divorce actually happened. And then of course all the fun that comes with that, right? Like moving a couple times and having to separate finances and it turns out it's like so much easier to get married than unmarried. Just FYI to anyone ever listening to this. There's a lot of pain and consternation and paperwork and legal stuff, and it just blew my mind how much easier it was to get married, just legally even. But yeah, that year was very destabilizing in a lot of ways, and so all I really had was my own thoughts to sit with, and that for me I think was a huge catalyst for really feeling a lot more comfortable in my identity and embracing it. The other thing that was interesting about that time is Unrelenting published in 2022. And there was a trend in the writing community, especially in Twitter, while it was still Twitter, with the hashtag own voices. So for anybody who wasn't deep in that world at the time, that basically was sort of uplifting people who, like, for instance, a Black main character and the author is Black, or a disabled character and the author is disabled, right? So drawing on the author's own experiences um, to put into the story in an authentic way. And I think it has really lovely intentions. And the other thing that was happening is it was becoming weaponized right at that time, where if anybody wrote, for instance, a disabled character and was not disabled, but had done a lot of research and was very respectful in that process, they were still getting maybe not canceled, but downvoted into the depths. And so here I was with a character. This book was about to come out. I was not out to anyone except for like my closest people. And it says in the book, I'm asexual. And I'm like, if I don't come out to the world, I could have a problem. Um, or I may be sort of forced to come out. And so that was the backdrop for when I did come out. And it was because of this hashtag. And because of sort of the viciousness of the online community in um, attacking folks who did not at least publicly share um, a major identity with their main character. So it's definitely loosened back up at this point, saying, like, yeah, we love to see it when there's own voices, and also there are respectful ways to write characters who are different from you or have a different lived experience from you. So it has changed, but it was honestly quite scary. And I remember being asked, well, what will your grandparents think, and what will, it was pretty. It was not fun. But I think ultimately, I've sort of like you. It's like you don't want the concussion to happen. You don't want the divorce to happen. You don't want these challenges to happen. And also, beautiful things can come of it, and you can feel more secure in your own identity, and you can speak out about it more easily, perhaps by kind of going through those trials. So
Yeah,
that's sort of yeah, that's my story around it.
absolutely. And it is so bizarre how these random life experiences can lead you on such a different journey that would have never potentially have you never would have come to the realization had it not been for those, life moments, so to speak.
Yeah. Funny how life works.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Thank you for listening. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. I
And to the
mean,
chat.
I uh I I very much can sympathize because it was, these two major life moments that I think led me in this particular direction that I am, on now.
Yeah.
Talking back with
Yeah, it is.
my therapist, it
Sorry.
wouldn't have had we both, kind of came to the realization I don't think we'd be here today talking if it weren't for that initial concussion of all things.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It is, and not to oversimplify, but it is kind of a, yeah, an empowerment out of something that is disempowering.
Exactly. So, something a little lighter, something that
Yes.
many of us on Twitch know a lot about. Let's talk about gaming.
Heck yeah. I have a toque surprise. Here we go.
That is amazing. I love it. And so, for those
I'm
listening on the
ready.
podcast, it's a toque with, I believe, the NES original Link and the
Oh yeah.
NES Triforce. It looks absolutely fantastic. Hopefully, I can snap a screenshot of it and post it in the um, on the podcast side for folks to see. That is
Yes.
amazing. I love it.
Yes, snapshot away. It's like painfully warm, so I don't know how long
That is
I'll last with it on my head.
understandable.
But but I'm ready. I'm ready to dive into this topic. And I think
Yeah.
as an old have played, yay, even the old NES
Mm-hmm.
Zelda. So
Absolutely.
they've gotten better.
They have, yeah. My first introduction to Zelda began on the N64 with uh, Ocarina of Time, and so I have many, many wonderful memories of playing through that game with my brother. Early days of the game guides on GameFAQs.com, which were all text based, and having to figure out where they're talking about based on some really poorly written text because they didn't have screenshots. This internet was not great then, but
Yes.
lots and lots of really wonderful memories playing through Ocarina of Time with my brother, inevitably getting stuck on the water temple
Oh gosh.
and
Oh Lord.
never going back to finish that until many, many years later on the 3DS. was actually the first time I ever got through the water temple.
Oh, you made it though. You
I
did
did
it.
many, many,
And I
many
hear
years
they
later.
I hear they upgraded the like the architecture, the graphics and stuff for that too,
Yeah.
for the 3DS. Okay, yeah. I stumbled across recently a website and I can't remember the name of it. If I find it, I will send it to you in Discord later so that it can get shared if people are interested. But it was like a architectural assessment of Zelda games. And like looking at the decor and looking at the environment and like gleaning it, just treating it as if it were like an anthropological investigation. It was so fun to read. And when they got to the water temple, it was just like, whew, okay. This one is a big maze. And yes, it
Yep.
is.
Yep. I know so
Yeah.
many people that got stuck on the water temple, and so many people that I talk to say that it is their least favorite of all the temples in Ocarina of Time.
It is, but it is cool in its own way. And like when you get it, it's very satisfying. And it has the Shadow Link mini boss, which is
Mm-hmm.
one of the most fun parts of the game. So I don't know. I love it.
Yeah, I kind of had a backwards introduction where I started with the N64 and then many years later went back and played, Link to the Past. And I've only played little bits and pieces of the original Zelda. I've never played
Yeah,
much of the
same.
original,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I did uh, play through and complete somehow the Link to the Past. We had a recent playthrough in 2023, so there's an online ROM hack of Link to the Past, which allows two people to play the game simultaneously. And
What?
so I actually was in 2024 playing this with a friend, and we were both trying to play A Link to the Past through this um, it's called ALTTPO. It's quite the acronym, A Link to the Past Online. And so what it does is both of you are playing the game and you're playing your own versions of it, but you can see each other appearing on the screen. And what it does is it links up key items. So small items like rupees and whatnot are not shared between games, but any of the key items like the hook shot, etc., when you unlock it in one of the games, the other person will immediately get access to it.
Ooh,
Problem
that
is,
sounds very fun.
the problem is, however, is that the hearts also count as a key item, but
Oh no.
they are not shared between the games, and so you can only one of the two folks can get the heart. So here I am. I'm struggling through this game, and my friend is doing so much better, beating all the bosses, getting the hearts. And so here we are, like, 5 or 6 temples in, and I'm still at 3 hearts. And so it's getting harder and harder for me to fight the bosses. And so we finally, and I remember this on International Asexuality Day because it's quite the meme. I came up to my 69th death in the game on International Asexuality Day. We got a clip on that on Twitch. But my friend's like, no, you are beating this boss so that you can finally get a heart for once.
My gosh. That's so classic. Also, wow, that's like sudden death Zelda. That's very, very hard. There's enemies that'll hit you for more than
Yeah,
3 hearts
it's
as you
so
advance.
hard. It's so hard. The old school Zelda was
Wow.
so unforgiving compared to the newer ones.
Yeah, it was. And you had no it wasn't like there was like a quest log or anything like they have in the new ones. Like you just had to know where you were going and
Mm-hmm.
like remember.
There were no game guides back in the NES and the SNES era. You had to figure it out on
There
your own.
were, so you could buy from
Yeah,
Nintendo
you
game
could.
guides. Um, but that was about it. They had very cool artwork
They
though, as
did.
I recall.
They did.
And you're like, oh, that's what that thing is supposed to look like?
Yeah.
Because it's like 7 pixels on my
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah. No, those things were great. They had some really good Nintendo guides, but there weren't the online
Yeah,
guides that we now have access to.
definitely not. And I didn't have access until 2002, the
Mm-hmm.
internet at all. So 2002. I don't know what was out. I don't think GameCube was out yet. I think it was maybe still the 64 era. At least I didn't have one. I didn't get one until I got a GameCube in 2009. I was late. I was late to the party of getting a GameCube, but I would just graduated from university and I was like, I have my own dollars. I'm going to spend them on this old GameCube and Wind Waker combo, and I regretted nothing. That's how I spent my evenings as a young college graduate.
Heck yeah, that sounds epic.
So good. I always liked Zelda games, also because I was an only child, or am an only child, and so there were a lot of games that were super popular that like just aren't fun unless you're playing with somebody else. And so it was one that was perfectly fun by yourself, and so it was perfect for me, and I could just hog that Nintendo and no one cared.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yes.
for me, top three are Ocarina of Time, followed by Majora's Mask, which many people kind of call the what would have been the DLC to the Ocarina of Time in many ways, if
It's like its own game
DLC.
though.
It
It's
is. Some
yeah.
people kind of see it as like a spin-off. I mean, you've got it's the
Yeah.
same era of Link. It's the same Link, so to speak. But yeah, it's a very different game in many ways. Much darker
That game
game.
is yes. I think it's brilliant and beautiful. And yeah, sorry, what's your third?
Link to the Past.
Oh, you were classic. I love it.
Yeah. So those are my top three. And then number four, believe it or not, is Echoes of Wisdom, the newest one.
Wait, which one is that?
It's the newest one. The one where
Oh,
you actually play as Zelda. And so it's the
okay. I have
first
not
Zelda
played this
game where
yet.
you actually play as Zelda, and Link only makes a brief cameo appearance at the beginning.
About time. I mean, she can just like hold off enemies all on her own. So interesting. Okay, I'll have to check that out. I'm currently just now finally getting into Tears of the Kingdom. So I tend to be a person who like will play the prior game when the new game comes out. So I'm apparently holding true to that. Um I think my favorites, I don't know if I have like a top three list in order, like one, two, three, but I think the games that like touched me the most were probably, I mean, Majora's Mask is just so rich and
Mhm.
disturbing and
Yes.
sobering.
Yes.
But also hopeful. And just such a, oh man, what a game. What a
That it was,
um
absolutely.
wow. So that one is amazing. I also really loved Wind Waker. I know that when it came out, the art style was much debated.
Hmm.
Um, but if one has come to Wind Waker from Ocarina of Time, it has special significance, and not the art, but the game. Um, and I don't want to spoil things, even though I know that this game has been out for like 25 years or something. But um, yeah, it's cool. It's really cool. The lore of that game is really cool. Other favorite? I don't. I mean, I think because I love A Link to the Past, and so therefore I love Um, oh, what was the game on one of the handhelds?
A Link
A Link
Between
Between
Worlds.
Worlds. A Link
That
Between
was great.
Worlds. Wow.
That was great.
So I think I love a lot of the games that reference the games, the earlier ones they all reference, right? Like there's
Yeah.
always the same moblins and stuff, but like reference the actual mechanics and the world in a really like, and it feels like in a way that's like an homage kind of way, or
Hmm.
even Cadence of Hyrule. Did you play Cadence of
I have
Hyrule?
not had a chance to play any of the Cadence games,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Yeah, if that one is very A Link to the Past as well. Um, but mixed with Crypt of the Necrodancer.
Hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
which I also loved. But yeah, I guess like my core games that because all of these like reference that is probably Ocarina and A Link to the Past. But I love the games that reference them because it feels like it's like a love note to those games, and so
Hmm.
makes me happy.
Echoes of Wisdom has a lot of Link to the Past references.
Okay, I've got to get it. Is it on the new Switch?
It's on the old Switch.
Oh, good. Okay, because that's what I
Yeah.
have.
That's all I have. I cannot afford a $700 Switch 2. That's
No.
not happening
This,
anytime soon for me.
this is why I buy the new thing whenever the Switch 3 question mark, I don't know, whatever they come up with next comes out, then I'll probably get a Switch 2
Yeah,
because they'll be all discounted.
absolutely. So yeah, the
Yeah.
Echoes of Wisdom, the graphics are very Link to the Past esque. You've got
Oh.
the two. You also have both the River Zoras and the Ocean Zoras.
Ooh,
So you've got the Link to the Past
interesting.
Zoras and the Ocarina of Time Zoras in both of them present in the game.
Interesting. Okay, I have to play this. That sounds great. Right now I'm on the game path. I am tunneling through Fallout New Vegas as fast as I can because I would like to try to finish it before the new season of Fallout comes out. I don't know if I'll be successful. But as soon as that's done, I will return to my Nintendo homeland. Yeah. They're so great. And I don't know, like, people poo-poo them sometimes because they don't have the same type of storytelling as, a Final Fantasy game or something. But and you're just playing Link. You don't have a party. I don't know. It's in some ways they are very simple games, but there's such depth and such richness to each of them. And then when they talk to each other, it's it's a really great franchise. I love them so much. I know I'm preaching to the choir here.
I love the Zelda franchise, and
Yeah.
there is so much lore behind the games, especially now that we're what is it? How many years has it been since the original came out on the NES? What year did
That was
Zelda 1?
probably in the 80s. So, yeah.
1986, the year before I was born.
Yeah. The year after I was born.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah, I was not a infant playing that game, but
that's why I
so the
came
way I
back to
actually
those much later.
yeah. Yeah. I still haven't, just like you, I haven't really played through all the way those early ones, but I did the way that I got a Super Nintendo was I was invited as a child to a birthday party that was at like an arcade. And I think everyone was running around playing and I was just standing there like overwhelmed. So many lights, buttons, I don't know what to do. There's kids screaming. And so the parent of the birthday child, when my parents came to pick me up, said, Marie had fun, but I think doesn't know how to game. And my parents discussed amongst themselves and said, I guess a child growing up in the 1990s to be socially acceptable and to fit in needs to learn how to play video games. And so they pulled together their pennies and they bought me a or Super Nintendo. And I think I was probably 7 or 8 or something. And the game that you could buy it, so that the game that came with it was either Super Mario World, I guess, or Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. And so they got the Zelda one for some reason. And you get out of bed in that as that game starts. I remember my dad like hooked it up to the big tube TV, because, for those of you who aren't our age, you had to play games on channel 3. Like you
Yep.
had to have the TV set in a very specific way. And so we got going. You get out of the house, you break a few pots probably, I'm sure, and you go to the castle, and then suddenly there's a guard. It's your first enemy. And I just threw the controller at my father like, it's a Pokemon. Pokemon wasn't even a thing yet. It was a Pokemon. And now look at me go. I run straight into battle facing Ganon without a fear.
Yep.
So proud of myself. I've come a long way since I was whatever.
Absolutely. And back when, you know, Ocarina of Time was around, it was actually my brother playing, and
Ah,
I did not know how to play Zelda very well. It wasn't until after that that I started to play Zelda on my own. I just enjoyed
oh yeah.
hanging out with my brother while he played the game.
I remember when that game, I got a Nintendo 64 probably for like my birthday some year. And again, we had the money for like a game, right? Like, so I had become such a big Zelda fan that it was Ocarina of Time. That's what I wanted. And I just remember, like, because I hadn't seen any of the commercials, I didn't know what to expect. It's just another Zelda game, and I get it, and it's 3-dimensional, y'all. It's 3-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
I was mind blown. It was radical technology at the time.
Absolutely. It was such a huge change from the SNES. I mean, the closest that we got was, but I don't think that game was all that popular in North America. It was Super Mario RPG was probably the
Yeah,
closest that we got to 3D on the SNES. And that was one of
right.
the very last games that came out on the SNES. So the N64
Yeah.
was a huge radical change and shift in video game technology. And welcome on
Yes.
in the Demented Raven. I do want to shout
Hello.
out the Demented Raven, who has been nominated for 13 separate disabled content creator awards, and you should definitely go give them a follow. Um,
Yay,
Raven
hello.
was one of the
Congrats.
folks that appeared on the last episode of the podcast when we talked about the intersections of disability and asexuality.
Yay. Very cool. A good episode. I enjoyed it very
Absolutely. I
much.
really enjoyed that. And on that note, I was nominated for two different awards this year. I was nominated for um, the LGBTQ plus disabled content creator of the year, which Raven was also, as well as co-working content creator of the year. And the nominations for that are open until November 30th, at which time they'll announce the top 5 in each of the different categories. So
Amazing.
that
Congrats.
was absolutely amazing to find out. I literally found out moments before streaming yesterday, and I was almost in
Oh,
tears streaming yesterday. I was so blown away that I would even be considered amongst all the amazing content creators that are listed as nominees.
wow.
So
Well deserved. Well deserved. We
that
are among
was
royalty.
that was a really amazing moment yesterday.
Awesome. Well, we are celebrating with you
Thank you so much.
and with Raven.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to see you, Raven. Thank you for stopping by. It's always a pleasure to see you. Raven also just came out with a couple of brand new songs that are pretty good. They're a musician.
There's a lot of talent
Yep.
in this sphere of yours.
Yeah,
I got
I've
some
been
fun.
so blessed to meet so many amazing folks through this journey here on Twitch. Scottish NB freelance composer.
Amazing. And of course, yes, you are in that number as well.
I'm not an NB freelance composer. I'm NB, but
No, you're in the number of amazing, creative, incredible folks.
Thank you.
Yes. Sorry, I'm just responding to the chat. This is making no sense to the podcast. Now I know what it's like for the guests who are responding to things in the chat, and I'm sitting here on the podcast like, I don't know what they're talking about,
So
but they seem like they're having fun.
now Marie knows.
I get it. Yes, I get you. I understand her even. So
Oh,
good.
I don't know if we'll be able to. I think what we'll do is we'll have to go on a short break here because I think I have used up all my skips on the ads, and we're going to get hit with
Okay.
a wall of ads here. So why don't we, unfortunately, go on a very short break here so that nobody misses out on our chat, and we'll be back in 3 or 4 minutes. Sorry about this,
Sounds good.
folks. It's the way it works here
These
on
things
Twitch.
happen.
So I'll see you on the other side. All right, welcome back, folks. Thanks for sticking around. We were chatting lots about Zelda and how amazing all these folks like the Demented Raven are, and just the amazing amount of talent that's been announced on the nominees for all these different disabled content creator awards. I was blown away to find out I was nominated for 2 myself, and the nominations for this round of voting are open until November 30th. I will post it on the YouTube side of things if folks want to check it out. I'll also post it on the podcast, though this would only be of interest if you're listening in the window before November 30th, 2025.
Yes. Please tell us how to access the nominations.
Absolutely. I'll post it in the chat right now, and then I'll post it in the descriptions of the podcast episodes.
Yay. I love encouraging people to self-promo. It's one of my favorites.
Thank you. I don't do it enough sometimes.
Yeah, I know. We're all guilty of like celebrating everybody but ourselves. So it's all good.
So, do you have anything else you wanted to talk about with regards to Zelda or to video games?
Whew. I I think I was thinking during the ad break about what I said about, I really loved Zelda games because I was an only child and I didn't have a sibling to play games with, although occasionally my father would play with me. But it also made me think like one of the things I really appreciate about Zelda games is the fact that Link never speaks because you are able to put yourself in a little bit more. And it made me think about too, why do I enjoy games like Skyrim or Fallout? Same kind of thing. Like you can respond how you want, maybe within a limited set of responses, but still you get to pick. Or the Outer Worlds that I was talking about earlier, where you get to choose your responses and choose one that fits you or fits a character that you're kind of playing. Um, And so I was curious how you in the chat feel about that aspect of games, and whether like there are certain games that I've played where like you play a very specific character, and you're doing the things that they would do. You're playing Indiana Jones or whatever, right? Um, how do you feel about games where you can be more directive as the player?
I would say that growing up, I didn't appreciate them as much, but now I would say I would appreciate them much more. And I'd like to do some more, story-driven games going forward at some point on the channel. Welcome on in, Princess Ali's Kingdom. Good to see you as well. Ali was also nominated for two creator awards for the 2S LGBTQIA plus streamer of the year, as well as um, the disabled female streamer of the year. We had a
Congrats.
lot of fun
That's
playing.
awesome.
I had a lot of fun playing Mario Kart yesterday on Ali's channel. We were playing Mario Kart for one of the Fruity stream team member Kiora of Miss birthday, and it was a ton of fun. Uh, I
I love Mario
realize
Kart,
how
but
bad of
wow.
a Mario Kart player I am in comparison to everybody else.
Same. And like I don't blink when I play it. And so I'm like afterwards, like my eyes are just like streaming with tears. Not just because I lose a lot, but also because they're very dry.
Yeah, that's I am so bad at that too. It's just so easy to keep staring at the screen and then it's like, "Oh man, why are my eyes so dry?"
So dry. Yeah, fast-paced stuff is harder for me too. I think that's another reason why I like a more self-directed game as well, as like a balance to that,
Mhm.
because if I need to pause, I can pause and
Yeah,
blink
you can take
or
it at your
grab the
own pace
Visine.
for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Ali loves Zelda as well. Ali is a huge Zelda fan.
We love it. How can we not be? They're so great. I yeah, I think they've changed a lot over the decades, those games. But I think there's some really interesting aspects of them, of that, just giggling at the comment. Just living that Zelda life. Yes. Like, I think it's so interesting that, um, the the objects of beneficial power, um, come from goddesses, that a lot of the characters that are like still a little bit more side characters, but still so helpful. Um, were like these fairies and the princess and all of that. And I feel like of the time when these came out, that was not as common. Like it just wasn't as common to see female figures at all in games, or really even humans sometimes. This was, coming out of the era of Pac-Man. There's no gender in Pac-Man, I suppose. Oh, I guess there kind of is because there's Mrs. Pac-Man. Anyway, it's very
Mm-hmm.
gendered.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was, I think, something that I don't know if it really was progressive or intended to be, but I think that's interesting, about like the lore of Zelda. And I
Mm-hmm.
think too, like the depiction of Link as again a character that many people could sort of identify with. There's a bit of an androgynous quality to Link, and I think that again made Link maybe more accessible to some people. So I think that's really interesting. Again, I don't know how much of this was intentional or maybe me just projecting my own thoughts onto it, but definitely as like a little gamer girl in the 90s, it felt accessible and it felt exciting in a lot of ways. Like we've been talking about books a lot today, and the only books I could think of that I read as a child that were like science fiction fantasy books that had women in any or girls in any type of like exciting role were the books, the Alana books by Just had her name. Somebody help me in the chat. Hang on, I have to Google it. The Tortall books by Tamara Pierce. There we go. And then books by Madeline L'Engle, like A Wrinkle in Time, and everything else. There was no space for someone who looked like me to have any role, really. And so I think that's another reason why I really love Zelda games.
It's
I just on
interesting that
purpose.
you,
I mean, that.
yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned, and Ali also mentioned that Nintendo did it on purpose. Link having a little bit more of a androgynous feel to his character. But actually, there's a couple people I know for whom Link was their non-binary or agender awakening.
Oh, yeah.
So
That's so beautiful.
absolutely.
To say like not only are we creating space for all people, but like you can be the protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that's the thing about rep that's so beautiful is like when you get to have space to be the hero, and also when other people acknowledge that like, hey, an NB person can be the hero, and it creates awareness more broadly too, because I mean we need representation for everybody's sake. We need to understand that anybody can play the protagonist role.
Absolutely. And to finally see Zelda get to play in her own game is fantastic, and not just
Yeah,
be
only like
the
40 years in.
yeah, it only took 40 years. Here we are in
That's funny.
2025 and it only just
Yeah.
happened.
Heck, even Cadence got a game before
Yeah.
Zelda.
Yeah.
Oh well.
But
That's
they
okay. And
finally, Echoes of Wisdom finally allowed Zelda to be her own hero. And great
yes,
game, definitely worth checking out. I've really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, have not finished my playthrough of it yet. Things got really busy and then I got sidetracked and I still have yet to finish it. So I do need to finish it. It's just how do I finish it when, Legend ZA is currently out and I've got, the PhD, I've got exam proctoring and all this other stuff to balance too.
you're doing the best you can, and also you're doing better than I am. Tell you why, because I did not even know it existed yet. So you're doing great.
I mean, I
I'm
spend
like
far
over
too much
here.
time on Twitch, so it's easy enough to do.
Fair. Yeah, I struggle with being online. I do tend to be like I love the community aspect of being online, and also I am a chronic doom scroller, and I really struggle with setting boundaries for myself around that, and with my mental health as is what it is. Like I just have to be really careful. So therefore sometimes I miss things that are like really exciting and would be really good for me to know about. But that was one of them that I guess just got lost somehow in my awareness. So thank you. Letting me
Absolutely.
know it exists.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's so easy to doom scroll and just get fed all that really negative stuff on the algorithm. So very important to limit the doom scrolling. Absolutely. I get sucked down that rabbit hole far too often.
Yeah, exactly. I was mentioning to you before we hopped on that I just got a new phone, and it's a smartphone, but it does not have an app store. So it only has the apps that they give you. And the apps that they give you are basic functionality apps like phone, camera, notes, podcast, maps. That's about
You
it.
see,
And so this
part
is
of me,
my latest effort.
part
Sorry.
of me wants to go back to the days when we had the Nokia flip phones. And
Oh
some
yeah.
of you may be too young to know what those were. But they were basically the hottest item to have growing up. Um,
Yes.
and they were,
And
the
like
first
really
time that,
satisfying. Sorry.
The first time that you could actually have this phone that would open up and close instead of just having a cell phone that was like a square object and was probably bigger than most pockets.
Yes. And if you wanted to like hang up on somebody, it was so satisfying because you're just like, no, and you just snap it.
Exactly.
It's almost as fun as slamming down a phone in the receiver, the old school.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was I do remember I am old enough to remember rotary dial, but it was
Oh yeah.
just at the tail end of it.
Yes. My grandmother taught me how to use it. And I was like, this is archaic at the time, but
Yeah, same.
yeah.
Same. And
But they were
I
still around.
because my father worked in the tech industry, I had access to computers very young. So my first computer when I was 5 was an MS-DOS computer. So like
Oh
I
yeah.
know the old school pre-Windows era computers.
You're like, I was there at the forging of the ring. Yes, we had a dot matrix printer, we had a DOS computer. Um, yeah, that thing was no fun. And then we got a compact something or other. It didn't have internet, but it did have some great games. So my first video game ever, I think, other than just like Minesweeper, was Myst. And I played that with my father. And talk about games that give you no help.
That was so
Oh
hard.
my
I
gosh.
remember Myst. I was so lost in that game.
It's beautiful. It's compelling, but it is the most confusing.
It's so confusing.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a
And I
sequel to
remember,
it? Riven or something?
yeah, Riven.
Gosh, that's going
Yeah,
way back. I can't believe
way back.
yeah, it's bringing me way back.
Yeah, so my dad and I played Myst together. I think we kind of were like, okay, that's enough brain. We did not move on to Riven, but I
Yeah.
remember I remember playing that with him, and at the very end of that game you have to make a choice, and it feels like a high stakes choice without me trying to, spoil this 35-year-old game for people. But um, I remember turning to my father and saying, we should save here now. Because games did not autosave at the time at all. And I had no internet. So no one had ever taught me the trick of like save at this point so that you could like get different endings or that you could like try that again. Like if you just forgot to save, you just had to go back maybe hours. And I was like, oh, I'm so smart. And we did. We like played through like multiple different choices and saw like, what our options were. So that was a lot of fun. But that, yeah, we are the olds of the Ace world and the
Yeah.
Arrow world.
Yeah, absolutely. Many folks listening probably won't have heard of any of these things.
They're like, y'all are surprised you saw teeth. Like,
uh,
oh man.
so many memories, though.
Yes. But yeah, games are good. Games have always been an important part of my life, and mostly single player
Hmm.
type stuff. I think it's a combination of being an only child and also just not being particularly competitive.
Yeah.
Like if I would play Mario Kart with friends and they win, I'm like, and they're really excited about it. I'm like, it seems like this matters to you a lot more than it matters to me, so that's fine. Yeah, and I'm that way with board games too. I don't know how many folks here are board gamers, but my favorite board game franchise, I guess, is Gloomhaven. And it is because it's a cooperative game, and I love it so much. In fact, my fantasy heist that comes out next year originally started as a Gloomhaven fanfic. So,
That's awesome. I love that. Actually, our organization that I run the Ace and Era group at has a board game night every Friday that usually has between 20 and 30 people that show up to it.
oh wow,
So like
that's
that
a
is
good group.
hopping. That is a very popular group. So yeah, there's a
Nice.
lot of
Yeah,
board gamers I know, and there's quite a few D&D folks in this community here.
I'm sure. Yeah, there tends to be a lot of good overlap. Um, yeah, and D&D, yeah, again, it's because it's so self-directive. It feels so very queer friendly and
Absolutely. And I know a
yeah,
number of folks that have come to understand their own queer identities
yeah,
through D&D.
yes. I was actually interviewed for a zine. I don't know if it came out, but it was somebody's graduate project somebody was working on, a mutual. I wasn't friends with that person, but I was friends with a friend of theirs. Um, about the role that games and D&D came up a lot for a lot of people, played in their understanding of their own sexuality, their own romantic orientation, and also their understanding of gender, and then also beyond that, like their community around that. And so I'll have to see if it actually got published yet. So if it did, I'll send it to you. But it sounded like a really cool research project, and how neat to put it out into a zine to just make it really accessible to folks.
Absolutely would be really interested to see that when it becomes published and publicly available for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. As a queer, as your DM, I don't think I've ever, yes, I don't, I've ever played D&D without at least one person at the table trying to figure out gender stuff. Yep,
Yeah. And
it's a thing.
I remember somebody on the Ace and Arrow train talking about initially in D&D their character was non-binary and agender, and then over time they realized through D&D that they themselves were agender. So that's so common in the D&D community.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a safe environment, or at least safer environment, to play around with things and to try on things, see how it feels. Um, and for me, sorry if you're hearing noises, my dog is digging, just trying to make a bed for himself out of the carpet. It's not gonna work. Anyway, for me, it was more like forum, like text-based role play type stuff, but very similar function. Um, so yeah. That's
Absolutely.
definitely a really fun environment for trying. I think D&D can be even safer though, because it's not like in a public forum, it's just like in a Discord that you
Mm-hmm.
own, or it's in your house or something
Yeah.
like that.
Or it's at, a queer board games night like it is at our
Exactly.
organization.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I do love me some Gloomhaven. I love it because it's cooperative, but there is a little bit of sort of internal competition. Like there are finite resources, like you were talking about previously with that co-op Zelda. That only one person can get that coin,
Mm-hmm.
and also when you start like a scenario, everybody gets their own individual battle goal, like their goal for that specific scenario. And so sometimes they do bump into each other. Sometimes it's um, one person gets like, let nobody in your party exhaust. And then somebody else will get something that's like, you're the only one not to exhaust. And so, there is a little bit of tension there, but still at the end of the day, you're all trying to win together. And if you lose, you all lose together. And so, it's easy to sort of say, okay, we're going to focus on the goal of the scenario first. And then if some of us can get other side goals as well, that's a cherry on top. But that's how our group plays. I think there are some groups that probably play a little bit more competitively.
Yeah, absolutely. I do know some folks that are like really hardcore into D&D and go into it in really competitive ways. But I also know a lot of
Yeah.
folks that are just much more casual of a D&D player. Good to see you, Busby. Busby and I were part of a raid train this past week, and we met each other initially on the Ace and Arrow train. Now you see how many folks in this community here met each other through that initial Ace and Arrow train last summer. And Busby, who's appeared on the podcast, is one of those folks. Good to see you, Busby.
Nice.
I hope you were able to get some sleep. Busby has had quite the unusual sleep schedule this past week, trying to stay up late into the night to help monitor the raid train.
That is an important job. Oh no, sleep is not part of your vocabulary. Oh no.
Yes, the
Yeah, the
Ace and
Ace
Arrow
Arrow
train
train.
was one
Sounds
of the
super
very
fun. I'm gonna
coolest
have to
things on the internet. Unfortunately, we
gonna
were
have
not
to
able to host it this summer because the original organizer was not available, and nobody was able to fulfill that. Because I was too busy this past summer, doing my own stuff to organize it, and unfortunately, we weren't able to recreate it this year. Maybe in 2026 we will. But
I'm crossing my fingers.
yeah, and it it
It sounds
really
super
was
fun.
the momentous kickoff of kind of my growth here on Twitch was that one event. It led to so many
Oh.
different things that have all come together that's, led to us being here today.
Aw. No, it sounds awesome, and I definitely need to keep building my community of fellow aspec folk. It's sometimes hard to find us. We do
Hmm.
tend to kind of puddle into certain portions of the internet that are not necessarily the most obvious to everyone.
No,
So
absolutely not. And it's difficult
yeah.
I always like to say, and I only am half joking, how does one find an ace in the wild? I don't know.
You know, I don't know. I actually don't know either. Like, how did I mean, yeah, I've talked about my story, right? Where I was just like came across, I don't know, a post, a blog, just something, I don't even remember what it was. And then I went on my own journey, and it wasn't for another year, basically, that I actually met other ace people. It took me a long time. So yeah, this is really special what you've created and other creators over here have created too. So I
And I'm
appreciate I appreciate the opportunity to be a small part of it.
absolutely, and it's been a pleasure chatting with you today, and especially
Me
being
too.
able to chat about so many nostalgic things that half the people listening today probably have no idea what we're talking about.
I'm amazed that we haven't like lost more people because I feel like this has had the air of like back in my day,
It really
phones
has.
had dials. TVs, you had to put in the cords the weird way to play the video games and
Yes, Marie does. So if you go to marieparks.com, it's in the pinned message there at the top. That's Marie Parks's website.
that's it. And I am on some socials, probably most actively on Instagram, maybe regrettably. I'm trying to become more active on Blue Sky.
Yeah, most
But
of us are Blue
hopefully,
Sky users.
yeah, it's a good place. I just keep forgetting it exists, and then I log in and have like 50 notifications, and I'm like, whoops.
Half of them are probably from me the last few days.
Oh, yeah, probably. I haven't been on it a little bit. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Oh my gosh. Uh, yeah. Anyway, I will retroactively post this because I know that, this is not the only watching this live is not the only
No,
opportunity to
absolutely
catch this
not.
conversation.
And thank you so much for reaching out to me. It's been such a
Yes,
pleasure
thank you.
chatting today.
You too. Thanks so much for saying yes, come on to a person you didn't know yet. And it's lovely meeting you. And after listening to the podcast for a long time and seeing all the folks in the chat. So appreciate you all.
Absolutely. And thanks so much for being here today, folks. It's been lovely to connect with everybody again today. All the legends in the chat that have all been nominated for various different disabled content creator awards. Please do go vote for all these well deserving folks. I can't spell, apparently. There we go. And just a reminder that is open until November 30th, at which time they will announce the top 5 who move on to the final round of votes in December.
Best of luck to all of you.
Thank you again. And thanks again for chatting today. It's been lovely.
Thank you.
And
Bye.
let's